Okay, so I used to work night shift at a small hotel, and this happened about a year ago. But I still think about it all the time because it genuinely freaked me out so bad, and I don't know what the guy's plan was or what he was trying to do. And it honestly makes me feel sick when I remember just how long he was there and that I didn't even realize he wasn't supposed to be there. The hotel was small, only 3 floors and maybe 40 rooms total. It wasn't a busy place. Usually we only had about 10 or 15 rooms filled on weeknights. I worked from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It was usually really boring and quiet, which was fine with me. I would just sit behind the desk, do some paperwork, sometimes check the cameras, sometimes watch YouTube on my phone if it was really dead. The lobby wasn't big, just the desk and some couches off to the side with the TV, and then some vending machines in the corner. Behind the desk was a little office where I had a computer and a chair and a glass window so I could see the lobby while I sat in there. At night, the front doors locked automatically, so guests had to buzz in, and I would press a button to let them through. Usually nothing happened after midnight except the occasional guest coming in late. But one night, this man came in around 11, and everything about it still makes my stomach drop when I think about it. He buzzed the door and I let him in. He looked mid-40s, tall, kind of skinny, but not too skinny, and he was wearing jeans and a baseball cap, carrying a backpack. He walked up to the desk and asked if we had a room for the night. I told him yes and gave him the price, and he nodded and pulled out a card. I swiped it, it went through, and I gave him a key card for room 214 on the 2nd floor. I remember he looked at me for a second too long before he left. He had this kind of blank expression, and his eyes stayed on me for maybe 3 or 4 seconds after I handed him the key. Then he turned and walked off toward the elevator. Nothing about it screamed dangerous right away, but it was enough to make me notice him. After that, I sat back in the chair and played on my phone for a while. Around midnight, I looked up and he was back in the lobby. He didn't come to the desk, he just walked past me and sat down in the lounge area with the couches. The TV wasn't on, but he just sat down facing it. I figured maybe he couldn't sleep or something. Some guests hang out in the lobby sometimes, so I didn't think too much of it. But then after half an hour, I realized he was literally just sitting there doing nothing. He wasn't on his phone or reading. He wasn't even dozing off. He was just staring straight ahead at the blank screen. I got up at one point to grab water from the vending machine, and when I walked across the lobby, I felt him turn his head and watch me the whole way. I didn't look at him directly, but I could feel his eyes on me until I was back behind the desk. It gave me this really uneasy feeling. Around 1 a.m., I was checking the reservation system on the computer because I was bored, and that's when I noticed something weird. I pulled up the occupied room list and saw that room 214 said vacant. I mumbled what the f under my breath and double-checked, because I literally just checked this guy in an hour earlier. I thought maybe I made a mistake, so I looked at the check-in logs, and there was nothing for him. No name, no charge, nothing. Then I went into the transaction screen to make sure his card had gone through earlier, and it showed no payment. I remember feeling confused as hell, because I swore I swiped his card and it beeped like it worked, but there was nothing in the system at all. That's when I picked up the phone and called room 214. It rang like 10 times, but no answer. Then I checked the key card entry log, which tells you if the door to that room was open that night, and it showed nothing. No one had entered the room. That's when I realized he never even went to the room after I gave him the card. I looked over into the lounge, and there he was, still sitting there staring at the TV that wasn't even on. I started to get this awful feeling in my chest. I sat there debating what to do. Part of me thought maybe the system just glitched, but the fact that the room had no entry log and no charge made it pretty clear he wasn't even checked in. I waited another 15 minutes just watching him. Around 1:30, I walked over and asked if everything was okay. He turned his head and looked at me with no expression, and he told me he just couldn't sleep. Then he turned back toward the TV. I nodded and went back behind my desk, but my hands were shaking. Around 2, I noticed he wasn't sitting in the lounge anymore. My stomach dropped right away because I didn't see him in the lobby at all. I scanned the area, and then I spotted him standing at the end of the hallway by the bathrooms, half hidden in the dark. He was just standing still. I kept glancing up at him, pretending to be on the computer. He stood there for a while, and then slowly walked back and sat in the lounge again like nothing happened. I called my manager at home and explained what was going on. She sounded tired and told me to just keep an eye on him and call the police if he did anything threatening. I remember hanging up and thinking that it already felt threatening, but I didn't know what else to do. I checked the security cameras after that. I saw him on the first floor hallway camera. He walked all the way down the hall, stopped at the end, stood there for several minutes, then walked back. Later, he went into the stairwell and stayed in there for about 10 minutes. I don't know what he was doing in there. Every time I looked up from the computer, he was somewhere else, near the vending machines or by the elevators, once just standing near the corner of the lobby where the light didn't hit well. He was always staring. By 3:30, I couldn't take it anymore, so I called the non-emergency police line and explained that there was a man in the hotel who I didn't think was a guest. They said they'd send someone. While I was waiting, I noticed he moved again, this time closer to the desk. He was standing maybe 15 feet away, just watching me. He didn't blink much, and he definitely didn't speak. He just stared like he had a staring problem. I pretended to type something on the computer, but I was so scared I could hardly breathe. At around 3:50, the buzzer went off, and I thought maybe it was the cops already, but it was just another guest coming back late. I let him in quickly, and the man turned his head and watched the guest walk past. I noticed his eyes follow him the whole way across the lobby. That scared me even more, because it was like he was studying him. A few minutes later, the man disappeared again. I checked the cameras and saw him standing outside one of the guest room doors on the first floor, like he was literally just standing there. So that's when I called actual 911. I told them he was outside a guest's room and I didn't know what he was trying to do. They said officers were on the way. I kept my eyes glued on the camera feed, and he just stood at the door for about 3 minutes, then slowly walked back to the lobby. When he came back, he walked right up to the desk this time and leaned over the counter. He looked at me and asked if there was any food. His voice was so low it was disturbing. I told him there were vending machines in the corner. He gave a small smile, then walked away. I just sat there staring at the clock, begging the cops to get there. Finally, around 4:10, 2 officers showed up. I let them in and pointed right at him. He was back in the lounge, sitting down. They walked over and talked to him for a few minutes. They asked for his ID and asked him questions I couldn't hear. Then they walked him out. One of the officers came back and explained that the guy wasn't a guest at all. The credit card he gave me was stolen, and he had no bags or reservation. He had just been pretending so he could get access to the building. They charged him with trespassing and the stolen card. After they left, I sat there shaking until my shift was over. Every time I looked at the cameras, I expected to see him again. The part that messed me up the most was realizing he had been inside the hotel for hours, wandering around and standing outside guest rooms, watching me from different spots, and he was never even supposed to be there. I have no idea what his plan was, but I know it wasn't good. That was the scariest night of my life. My name is Meredith. I'm 24, and I work the night shift at a tiny gas station off County Road 11. It's the kind of place most people don't even notice unless they're out of gas or completely lost. I took the job because it was quiet and predictable. I liked that, or at least I used to. It started on a Thursday night around 1 a.m. The air outside was wet and still, and the hum of the overhead lights had been getting under my skin all shift. I was just about to microwave a cinnamon roll I didn't even really want when the door chimed. A man walked in, mid-40s, maybe older. He had a green coat, messy hair, and dry lips like he hadn't smiled in years. He didn't head for the coffee or chips like most people. He just stood near the counter, staring at me with this strange kind of familiarity. "Hi," I said, forcing a polite smile. Then the man said, "You always work this late?" I blinked and said, yeah, mostly." He smiled. Then he said, "I figured. I've passed through a few times. Noticed it's always you." That